Good morning. Welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. It's been an interesting week since Friday.
I am glowing in excitement today, apparently.
Oh yeah, this is one that's been, I guess, long overdue. As everyone knows, I'm sure you've seen a number of reels, number of YouTube videos, everything.
Everybody's had
And
a comment on it.
Everyone's got a comment on it. So I guess it's our turn.
It's our turn.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to talk about this.
Yep, we've been waiting, and that is basically the NAR settlement. The National Associations of Realtors basically decided to settle on the seller side of the lawsuit, and we were going to have some new guidelines on how things are done. It's still in front of the judge. It has not been approved by him yet. That's key, but there's a number of proposals in there that are going to change how we structure deals overall. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I've noticed is that everyone's worried about how the commission is going to be set up, but no one's talking about how it's going to affect the borrower working with their lenders as well. Mm-hmm. And because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's being charged for commission. If we can't get buyers approved for loans, they're not buying a house. You're not getting a commission anyways, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big key, right? Like, we got to get them under contract. I'm just confused right now because I'm like, who really is the person paying the commission? Like, I mean, technically, could we argue that the buyers are already paying the buyer's agent commission because they're the ones funding the money?
Yes, you can.
Which could the further argument be that the industry as a whole is artificially propped up because valuations is assuming these commissions and these are not accurate valuations? I don't know. Like, we can get really conspiracy theory.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you just the questions start just going through your head. One of the first ones I thought of is just like you is, okay, Mr. Seller, you want to sell your house at $400,000 because everyone else in the neighborhood sold their house at $400,000. But wait a minute. Whoa, hold a minute. We have to do adjustments now. I'm an appraiser and I'm going to have to do an adjustment. So I'm now going to have to call and I'm going to have to check the MLS and I'm going to have to find out how much in commission they paid on that house, because that's an adjustment.
That's an adjustment.
So if you're not going to pay a buyer's commission and they paid a 2.5% buyer's commission, technically I have to cut that off the price of your comparable. So now I've just dropped about $10,000 off the value of your house. What? Yeah. People don't realize that this is how it's done. That when you're sitting doing comparables, is I have to look through, and one of the things I always look at is seller concession. And if someone has a seller concession here, but the others don't, then it's not traditional to that market. Then I'm going to cut that seller concession off the value of that house, and I'm going to adjust the value of that house down.
Yep.
I mean, that's a simple one. That's just a simple one out there right now. We can
go so much deeper in all of this, right?
Yep.
Maybe we will today. I don't know. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just talk a bunch of mumbo jumbo. We'll create even more confusion for everybody. And then at the very end of this video, we're going to sit there and say, hey, but none of this really matters because it's not actually official yet.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not. I mean, let's go through some of the rule changes.
With the glasses coming on, like we're gonna look.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we got. What do we got
anymore? When you get to be my age, okay, and you still have your hair, but you can't see. That's okay, Joe.
You know what? Like, I can see, don't have hair, but it's okay. I wear hats. It solves the problem.
But let's look at rule number 1. Basic rule is that they are prohibiting any requirements that such offers, if made, must be blanket, unconditional, or unilateral. So basically, the seller doesn't have to make an offer of buyer compensation.
Yep.
Okay. It's removed. Okay. And everyone says, well, it was never that way. Well, guess what? That's the way we did it. Okay. If you look at the Florida contract, I always thought it was kind of confusing as well. I'll admit it. It was, because at the top you had what we negotiated. Okay, say it was 5%. Okay, and then down below you would tell which portion of that you're offering to the buyer.
Yeah.
Usually, most agents were extremely fair and would do a 50-50. Sometimes you'd see, sometimes the listing agent would do 3 and offer maybe a 2 to the buyer's agent. But most times it was very fair, and it was understood. Okay, so on the MLS, we see it. No one else saw it, but I talked to another agent up in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and for over the past year and a half, they've been actually presenting what the buyer's agent was making on the compensation. It actually showed on through the entire system and front-facing websites.
Yeah.
So I knew what the buyer's agent was making. Okay.
But can we real quick on this one, and this is one that the issue here, right, on this was that we had to put something, right?
Yes.
And I'm just curious, would this, if they were allowed to put 0 there instead of $1, would we have even been in the mess that we're in right now?
Well, yeah, because there was money involved.
Okay.
That's simple. Yes, because they did change it. Our MLS changed it, where you used to have to put at least $1. They changed it to 0, but that wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough.
It's too little, too late.
Yeah, the Department of Justice actually came out with a letter on another lawsuit and said they want a complete decoupling of the commissions. And that's really, I think, what forced this settlement agreement, was the Department of Justice putting their 2 cents in, saying, no, we want it separate. Okay, this no more.
Which I feel like, I don't know, in the act of transparency, I would rather it be known than be like, hey, keep it out.
Yeah.
And they're not saying that they don't want it to be known. They're just saying they don't want it on the MLS.
Yeah. Yeah. The seller can still pay a portion or all of the buyer's agent's commission. They still can do it, but you can't put it on the MLS.
Yeah.
Okay. But next rule, I think it's this one. Okay. So you're going to eliminate any fields from the MLS with compensation. But guess what? It doesn't eliminate. I, as the brokerage house, okay, our website, we can show what the buyer compensation is.
Okay.
Okay. So what you're now going to have is you're going to have all these individual websites, Caldwell Bankers, Keller Williams, each branch, each brokerage. I imagine it'd be one of the first things that I would do is call my web designer and say, hey, I need you to add an additional field that we can manually enter, that I can show the buyers that we're offering a buyer's broker's compensation.
So, I mean, I'm thinking a little bit bigger here, right? I'm starting to think the hamster wheel spinning. I know I'm not that smart. If there's, we all remember that cartoon Pinky in the Brain from back in the day. I'm definitely Pinky. I'm not the smart cupcake, but my thought process is the whole point of the MLS was to get everything kind of in one place, centralized, super easy,
exactly,
so that we can, but I almost feel like with this and with technology, you're going to have Coldwell Banker, you're going to have, you're going to have Remax, you're going to have all these different mega brokerages, maybe EXP, they're all going to start and they're going to say, I don't need the MLS anymore. You want to show one of my properties? You need to create a login into my system so that you can gain those accesses. Because on my site, I can show you what's being paid, what's not being paid. I can do everything. So are we, in theory, is this potentially like an MLS might not be the the starting point for all this stuff?
It could be, but the problem with that is the one thing that MLS does extremely well, is the syndication of the information.
Mm-hmm.
You got to remember that it syndicates, I believe, over to 90 or 100 or even more different web pages.
Yeah.
So you as a once I enter it into the MLS and I say distribute it, okay, it goes out to all of the Keller Williams websites, all of the Coldwell Banker websites, all the Remax websites, my personal website. Every agent who has a personal website, it goes to all their websites. So this information is distributed to literally thousands upon thousands of web pages, and that's the benefit.
Yeah.
So that is quite honestly one of the biggest benefits.
Yeah.
But I understand is I think we are going to see a couple of them. You know, Redfin raised a big stink of leaving NAR. Okay. So where I mean, there's so many things like, are we going, part of the settlement is, you know, we're not going to be required to be part of NAR anymore. Well, NAR owns or has interest in a portion of the MLSs. So to gain access to the MLS, guess what? I'm still going to have to be part of NAR. It's a cluster.
It's a proposal right now, right? And we don't have all the answers. And that's where, like, and the reason why I share these things and thoughts is these are some of the pieces that I immediately draw out and go, okay, well, what if like Remax or I don't know, EXP and
I'll tell you who might leave real quick is Compass. Because in the settlement, if you did over $2 billion, I believe, of sales or revenue, NAR was kind enough to negotiate your settlement for you. Well, Compass's portion by themselves, I believe, is going to be $518 million, which is like 10 times what Keller negotiated, Remax negotiated. Why would I? Screw you guys. That's what you negotiated for me? I'm out.
You got a good point. I mean, that doesn't feel like a really good negotiation.
I don't think you negotiated too well with me. I mean, as an agent, look what they're going to do. They were kind enough to say, well, 2024, we're not going to have any increase in dues. Well, that's good because I already paid them, jackass. But you're short on money. So, we're going to have, just like a condo association, just like any homeowners association, we're going to have a special assessment for the next 4 years to pay this off.
All right. So it's like NAR.
But I didn't get a vote on this.
Not go bankrupt? Is that what I'm hearing here? No, I don't know.
They supposedly looked at filing Chapter 11. Why the heck you want? I don't know. But you know what? The CEO can make $2 million a year. Yeah, you're worth it. Nah.
But I definitely think they're caught in a very weird situation, and they've finally got to fight, because this is the part that always cracked. One of the most powerful lobbying agencies in the nation, like in DC, like was NAR. Like they're one of the most powerful lobbyists. And they finally found a court, they found a system, they found a place that they weren't able to kind of do.
Well, their whole defense was horrid. Absolutely horrid. If I'm defending the fact that, we're colluding at 6%, okay, every single deal should be 6%. Every single deal, right? You know what the first thing I would have done? I would have called up every single brokerage, send me every single deal below 6%. And I would have had statistics showing, okay, we did 100,000 transactions. Of those, 45% were done at 6%. 25% were done at 5%. 13% were done at 4%. They didn't do that. That's simple. That's common sense.
Well, I mean, if do you open yourself up to additional arguments? Because we deal with this on the mortgage side of like, okay, if you did something for less, like now it's like, hey, here's the data point. What was the ethnicity of those borrowers that got it at 4% versus 5% versus 5.5% versus 6%? Do we start like, was there a bigger, like, maybe that's the piece that we don't know is was part of the defense, making sure that they didn't open themselves up to a potentially bigger suit.
It could be, but I mean, I'll tell you what. Right now, I feel like our whole industry is totally under attack.
Yeah,
Completely under attack. I mean, you had the NAR settlement. What you didn't see a lot of headlines of is, guess what, Joe? CFPB doesn't like you. They're coming after you because you're overcharging too many junk fees on the ones they regulate.
I'm very confused because a lot of these fees were created because the CFPB created the regulations and rulings that required us to start charging these things.
Exactly. You're following the rules that they set, and they're saying they're wrong, and it's your fault.
Well, I think what we have now is like you have the CFPB do that, right? And then you had like Joe Biden in the State of the Union. He talks about what? Like we need more of this, and we've got to do stimulate, we've got to give more and afford it. Like what I feel like we've got here is we've got the government saying, wow, we have a problem here. Instead of trying to find a solution, we're going to point the finger at everybody else on why that industry is the issue. Why, what are lenders doing? They're wrong. Realtors are wrong. Like everybody, home builders are doing that.
You forgot the title companies because they're coming after the title companies too. They're coming after the title companies now.
No, I'm just kidding, just joking. All my title company friends, like I love you, appreciate you.
Because title insurance, they charge too much.
Mm-hmm.
Which is set in most states.
Yeah, the state sets it.
State sets it. But they charge too much.
It's all this regulation. I will say this, like realtors, for my realtor friends out there, Brenden, for you, the mortgage industry went through something very similar. The Dodd-Frank, we saw a CFP. We thought the world was crashing, and guess what? We still exist. We're still doing okay. Now we did, it is a lot harder to be as profitable as we once were. You definitely like the margins are a lot smaller. And apparently we have too many fees still. So they're still trying to figure out how they can continue to shrink down the margins. So that, you're getting a taste of what we've experienced. I'm going to roll my eyes back and be like, been there, done that. No, but I think, we're going to find a solution. It's going to go through. Is it going to be as big of a deal as we thought 2 years from now? Probably not. No. But today it's going to be a major, major issue because we haven't had to deal with it.
And I think one of the biggest problems is how quickly they're looking for the change to do.
Yeah. What is it, July?
Yeah. The proposal starts July. And I'm just like, how do you change all this in that quick of a period, especially if it takes him another month to agree or disagree with the settlement?
Now we got 90 days. Let's go. Let's change industry, like how things are done, and regulation and guidelines across multiple divisions.
Well, Fannie, Freddie, everyone's going to have to change something in there because, well, we were talking about it earlier, is with VA. What's the rule with VA on this?
Yeah, so I'm going to this is straight from the VA handbook. This is subsection, whatever. It's in regard to brokerage fees. And the exact words are, fees or commissions charged by a real estate agent or broker in connection with a VA loan may not be charged to or paid by the veteran purchaser. While use of the buyer brokers is not precluded, veteran purchasers may not under any circumstance be charged a brokerage fee or commission in connection with said services of such individuals. Since information on property available for purchase and financing options is widely available to the public from a variety of sources, VA does not believe that preventing the veteran from paying a buyer broker fee will harm the veteran in any way. The VA has a very clear stance. Everybody else doesn't have as clear as a stance. VA is very clear about this.
What that means is they will not pay a buyer representative commission.
Correct. Veteran cannot. Guideline, you cannot get a VA loan and the veteran pay that commission.
Yep. So if we have an agreement, say I have an agreement with a veteran at 2.5%, and I've got a seller concession of 2.5% to pay it, it cannot be paid. Bottom line. So the people who were supposed to help the most the program that's supposed to help, veterans, is going to put them at a severe disadvantage of being represented properly. They,
now
at this
I will
point,
say this. Last year at the VA conference, right? They said, because these lawsuits were going on, they said if the ruling happened and it changed, that they would address. But let's just be very honest. It's going into effect in July. How quickly have we seen? Is any government entity known for moving quickly?
No.
Like,
no.
We're talking about a policy change, a handbook change, a way that they do it. Like, I don't think it's going to be that quick. And but the idea here is like it's going to create some confusion on its knowledge. And I think you and I talked a lot about this, and I don't know if you want to go into. I think how contracts are written is going to be so vitally important right now in the future. And this may be the only change, and it might be very standard, very basic, not a big deal. But, we know that buyer agent commissions, it's customary that the seller pays them. So it's still a customary fee. It's still a customary seller expense, which typically means that across the board, as long as the seller is paying that buyer's agent commission, it's not considered any type of concession to the buyer.
Exactly.
But I think the wording is going to be crucial.
Here's where one thing we got to look at, and this is the breakout of concessions right now. What is allowed? And you and I know, especially over the past, year and a half, with the increase in requirements for down payment because of price increases. That a lot of times the buyer doesn't have the money for the closing cost. So what do? We sit down, we work together. We don't collude, Joe. We're no collusion here. Okay. We work together. Okay. And we go through the guidelines to make sure what we can do. And a lot of times we're sitting there looking at pennies, every penny of what we can get as far as contribution for our clients.
Correct.
FHA is 6%. Very rarely have you seen the full 6% used, but a lot of times, we were just the one we just did for Holly. We were over 4%. We were like almost 4.5%.
Almost 4.5%. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost 4.5% in concessions for her, but in that case, if this rule had already been in place and because she didn't have the money, we would have had to make sure that, my commission, say it was 2.5%, would have been able to fit within that concession.
Well, I think that's where, like we said, like it's going to be communicated. Like when you write, and this is where I think this is the bigger piece for me. You write that offer, right? So now you have to say the seller to pay buyer's agent commission of 3%. Right? Seller says, I'm not willing to pay 3%. I'm willing to pay 2.5%. Buyer's agent says, well, I got an agreement with the buyer. They're going to pay 3%. Right? So we've got this little bit of conundrum of now we have this. My concern with this is twofold. One, your realtors that don't specify that the seller's paying the commission, maintaining that it's a seller customary item, and they just say, hey, buyer to pay, buyer's agent to receive 3% commission, seller to give buyer a 3% closing cost credit. If you word it that general, I think most lenders and underwriters are going to interpret that the buyer's paying the commission, the 3% seller concession. Now, all of this on the screen applies to that. My bigger concern on this is you have what's customary. It's almost always customary to do what? Get 3%. Like the norm, and I say customary when you're asking, like it's pretty common to ask for 3% seller concession. Doesn't mean you're always going to get it, but that's kind of like that median. You ask for 3% seller concession for closing costs and prepaids. But now when you're submitting the offer, you're saying, hey, seller needs to pay X, and I need 3% seller concessions for my buyer closing costs and prepaids. Now the seller is viewing your offer going, wait, you're asking for 6%?
6%.
Like, I'm only willing to do 3%.
Yep.
That's where I think it changes, is now the buyer is going to be stuck with, they're not going to be able to negotiate closing costs because the seller feels like they're doing more. They're already doing something for them.
Yep. Exactly. And my understanding is with this agreement also is once we set a fee, we can't change it. So how many times have we worked together where we're last minute, we're at the table, and I've had clients who are $500 short, $600 short. And I've gone to my broker, hey, I need to do a concession on my commission of $600 so we can get this thing closed. I've never had a problem doing that. Never had a problem doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So now, am I not going to be able to help that buyer out? Or I've done it where I've calculated, okay, they're paying 2.5% in this commission. If I know they're a little bit short, so right up front, I know, hey, I'm going to give 0.5% of my commission to my buyer for closing. And I can live with the 2%. That's okay. I'm doing the right thing for my client. I'm helping my client out. Are they going to take all that ability away from me at the table?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something to think. And those are things that I don't think have been answered, right?
Mm-hmm.
That have and these are the pieces where I think we're going to have to work through. And I think you're going to get a lot of people in the immediate, if this goes through in July, a lot of people are going to have different interpretations. And the hard part about those interpretations is you're going to have brokers having different interpretations. You're going to have title companies having different interpretations. You're going to have lenders having different interpretations, all on a fee that is going to the real estate agent.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's fair to say that the real estate brokerages should probably have an ideology on this, right? Like they should have an interpretation. But the hard part is you got the title company dealing with the transfer of the money. So they're going to have an interpretation, but then the lender is going to want to make sure that they're following guidelines. So they're going to have a different interpretation potentially. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many unanswered questions on how we're going to handle all this. And, that's something we'll keep everybody informed of. I think until we actually get the sign off from the judge, and things start getting put into place. One thing I would like to see, quite honestly, is, push it back at least a couple months so things can get addressed and everyone's not scrambling. And, just causing extra problems for people, think it through, is there really a rush to do this? I don't think so, but, it is what it is, and we'll adjust. But our job is always to take care of our people, inform them, keep them up to date, and come up with solutions so that they can buy homes and sell their homes at top dollar. There's questions on both sides of the transaction and how this is going to affect people. So, anyways, that has been the fun so far. So let's take a look at our numbers for the week.
We got to power through this. We're already at 29 minutes. Let's go.
All right. So homes, 448 last week, which was a little bit higher than the previous week. We're seeing inventory increase again, up 96, which is nice. Our condos still in the doldrums, just absolutely in the doldrums, and they keep adding inventory. And then our original list to sales price, we're still sitting down at roughly that 94% in that 93s overall. The over 1 million has kind of popped back up a little bit, where we, a couple weeks in a row, we were sitting there at that 88%. Days on market sitting at 60, which I really think 60 days is kind of the new 6 months for a buyer's market overall. Because it seems like we're getting a lot more concessions, a lot more flexibility with sellers. And then you see our sales finally starting to pick up, which you would expect that. We're starting the spring season, really official kickoff. And then here, after almost 2 months of flat inventory in Orlando, we're starting to see that push up. And that's been one of the big headlines overall for the state of Florida. State of Florida's inventory is up like 55%. So there's a lot more homes for sale in Florida than there has been in a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Then hopping into our condos. See, this is pushed back up to like 95%.
Okay.
But I think a lot of that has to do with the pricing, in that the initial pricing on a lot of condos has come down. Like significantly, very significantly. And you see our average days are staying up there with the 60 on the condos as well. Then after taking a peek at the end of the month, boom, we're right back down for sales. And then you see inventory is just continuously increasing. Just from January of this year, we're up nearly 13% on the condos.
Whew.
So,
you know what's interesting with the condos too is we had a pilot program that we were offering where we were just going to the condo community and say, hey, let's go through the questionnaire, let's get it approved, let's confirm. This way you've got what you need, and if you need to make an adjustment, you can, to make sure that you open the door for financing. What blew my mind with this is most of the communities, and we didn't do a lot, we went to about 20 different communities. I had one that took us up on it.
Really?
So nobody was willing, like nobody wanted to actually be, and it's like
documentation.
And it's funny because either they already knew that they weren't going to be, and they knew they weren't going to change, or they were just, it is what it is. And that's kind of when we talked to some of the property managers, they were like, we're not going to qualify. We're not going to change. Right. And then others was very simple. Like, hey, like when a buyer's interested, they can pay for it. And I was kind of like, wouldn't you like to, and my question is, don't you want to be able to market that, hey, you meet Fannie Freddie guidelines, you guys are a strong community? Like, wouldn't that be something marketable that would help your buyers in the community and sellers and people and like, wouldn't that be a value? Most didn't feel like
that would actually help increase the value of the condos themselves. And I always thought the goal of an HOA is to keep the value of the community up. That's really interesting.
I just thought it was interesting because it definitely showed where the mind was for a lot. I feel like the mind is in survival, not in thriving, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've been hit just like everyone else. They've been hit, 7 ways from Sunday, with increase in insurance, increase in regulation. So I'm sure they're a little worn out too.
Yeah.
So, but, overall, Orlando's just kind of steady, moving along. Like you said, we'll get through all this. We just got to keep up, stay on top of it, keep up to date. And as things changes and as we understand more how things are going to be structured and how to provide a solution for both the sellers and the buyers, we're going to keep you informed. And that's why we do this every week. So thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate it very much. Please like, subscribe, and join us again next week. Take care.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys.